Here we show you how simple it is to use virtual machines in Cloud Mesh. We assume that you have Cloud Mesh installed. This includes to use the Cloud Mesh installer because we are developers. And in addition, we would need to we need to install the MongoDB database. Cloud Mesh has actually a command on how to do that. So you can look this command up with cms-admin help. And there is the admin mongo install command. I would like to mention, please execute this command with care. Make a backup first. Don't blame us if something is going wrong. If your system is supported, then you can do the following thing: cms mongo install, and this will be installing Mongo into your environment in a directory called .cloudmesh. If you have already Mongo installed, it will be up to you to make modifications to a configuration file to make sure that it doesn't clash with your MongoDB. The reason why we say this is because we have one command that's called cms-init that wipes out the entire database. So when you start out with Cloud Mesh and you have all the installation done, could, for example, say cms admin mongo status to see if your MongoDB is running. In case you don't have a MongoDB running and you are doing it for the first time, we have a convenient command that initializes Cloud Mesh. That's called cms-init. This will be populating certain attributes into your database that are being used for easy management of your cloud. But before you do this and access any cloud, you need to have a file that is being automatically created with CMS help and is located in your .cloudmesh directory and called cloudmesh.yaml. This file needs to be treated with care because it includes some passwords, or you may add some passwords to them. And one of the things that you don't want to do is expose that particular set of passwords to others. So when you showcase this to us or to others, you don't want to expose the command, you can say cms config cat less, and it will be displaying the content and will mark or hide the passwords. It will highlight those TBDs in red, showcasing you what you may want to change. And in this, for the use of, for example, Chameleon Cloud, you will find here a field that's called Chameleon, and you need to be setting the username and the password for that particular cloud. All the others are set as default, so that's kind of nice, so you don't have to actually worry about that. To get out of this list, you can simply say Q and then enter, or you can scroll till the end. Now let us figure out what we can actually do with Chameleon Cloud. We want to know what images there are. One of the important things is we have actually designed the Mongo database out of purpose, because when we issue list commands to the cloud, the list commands are redirected directly into our MongoDB, so that when we do consecutive list commands, we can use the list commands in our local MongoDB copy, which is then blazingly fast, in contrast to us establishing a connection to the cloud, download the images and so forth. This has a really big advantage if you, for example, go to commercial clouds that maybe have 90,000 images that you may want to look into and you may want to analyze. So what can we do? Well, we want to list maybe the flavors, so we say cms flavor list, but because we don't yet have anything in our database, we need to refresh the database with -refresh, and when we do this, we get this particular command, and we see the response from that cloud. If we leave off the refresh, we get the response from our local database. And you saw maybe it's slightly faster. We can also set the timer on, CMS set timer equal on. And now we can, for example, say CMS flavor list. And as you see, there's literally no time needed to execute this command. Let's see what happens when we do a -- refresh. And here we see that the difference is a second for this particular command. Now we want to know what the images are, so we say CMS image list, and then -- refresh. And here we see it takes 3 seconds to get that result back. If we now use this command without the refresh, let's take a look how fast it is. See, there's no time wasted, so we have really a very quick response time. So now let's start an image. So as pointed out in other videos, the images on Chameleon Cloud don't necessarily work, and they're being uploaded by other people. The ones with CC are typically managed by Chameleon Cloud, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily work, so you have to try them out. For example, the Ubuntu 14.04 image recently became broken, so don't use that. So let's just make sure we have defaults set for our cloud that are correct, and in our case we have modified the Cloud Mesh YAML file that we have to include a default to use 18.04 as the virtual machine, and we are using the medium flavor. So how would we boot this? The nice thing is this is going to be booted automatically from the configuration file, so we can simply say cms-boot while using all the defaults that are being specified in the YAML file. So as you now see, this is our default images, the CC Ubuntu 18.04 image, the size is medium, I've specified the key to be Gregor, and I have the security group to be default, which I already uploaded into the cloud for the entire class. So it takes a while, has figured out that the security group is already there. This particular verbose debug message we have just included so that if you run into an issue and you file an issue with us, that you can send that along and we can take a look at it. As you can see, it takes 27 seconds to do so. One of the interesting things is we have actually added some metadata to this image so that we can easily identify it within the Cloud Mesh database. And you see here the creation time of 2 seconds, and the missing 3 seconds are just the startup of the VM, or the missing 2 seconds are just the startup of the VM command. So it's to actually start a virtual machine, it takes 25 seconds. This is useful because we store this into the database so that we can compare it with future boot processes, so that we can say, hey, you know, the boot takes too long. In average we saw this, but now it takes too long. So now how do we actually see the virtual machine? We use the cms VM list command, and naturally we need to be refreshing this command. So this will be refreshing the information from the virtual machines into our database. And as you know, we can now say cms VM list and have an immediate feedback. As you can see, this is faster than this other command. So one of the other things that we did is we noticed that we started up a VM3. Automatically a name is being associated with my virtual machines that are being created from what's called a name.yaml file, and the syntax of this is defined in the following file. So you can say less user /cloudmesh/name.yaml, and here we have a schema where we have a user, a VM, and a counter. The counter and the user are values here in this file, so you can technically specify anything in here and put that into the schema, and you can customize this particular schema for you. So in our case, we then have the name 3. So let's try to log in. As it is important to note that the status active here doesn't mean that you can log in into the machine. And this can only be done when the machine is ready, and it will take some time to work that out for the cloud, and so you will have maybe some failures when you try to log in into the virtual machine. So let's try to get to this particular virtual machine and simply say SSH and then CC and then add and then this particular name, and I add this name typically to this list, so I have to do some hand processing. So let's interrupt this process, because there's an easier way of doing this in CloudMesh, because what we actually have is we have a command called cms-SSH that looks into what was the last virtual machine that I started, and now I'm logging in into the last virtual machine. It figures out all this information automatically. No yes, no question is being needed, and I'm in that virtual machine really quickly, and I can do what I need to be doing in my virtual machine. Make sure you keep the virtual machine up to date and do a proper update as is appropriate for Ubuntu images, so that you stay always up to date. Once you no longer need that virtual machine, you can exit it, and because if we do a list on this virtual machine, it's still there, and we would like that at one point to delete the image, because it is running at a particular time and agglomerates compute time and uses this up despite the fact that nothing's happening on the image. So make sure that whatever you do is you put your code that you're running in that virtual machine in your GitHub directory, so that you're using GitHub to check out that particular code and don't waste any computing time for running virtual machines that don't need to be run. Yeah, one of the problems we sometimes want to do is we don't actually want to log in interactively. We would like to just run a command on our shell. So certainly we can do this with SSH, but we can also do this with CloudMesh. We can say cms VM SSH, and this defaults us to the last virtual machine. Then we specify -command equal, and now we need to be quoting the command, and here we need to mask, in this particular case for CloudMesh, the quotes. So we have maybe uname -a, and we quote this. All quotes in the command line for CloudMesh need to be masked, and we execute this command. And as you can see, as we get the return back, it reports us, because we have the timer switched on, how much time that particular command actually takes. Most of this time here is being used for starting up CloudMesh. If you want to have a real fast command, you can certainly use the SSH command. Then you don't have to start up CloudMesh. This completes our CloudMesh virtual machine boot activity. As you can see, there's nothing to it, and it's super fast, and it's much more convenient than the graphical user interface such as from Horizon, because we simply can say cms VM boot. If I want to switch to a different cloud, what I need to do is I need to be saying cms set cloud equal AWS, and once I've done that, well, we need to be starting a virtual machine on AWS. The way we do this is cms VM boot. If I want to go to a different cloud, I set this to Azure and do the same command. Do cms VM boot, and so on and so on. So that was it for today. Thank you so much.